Ginsberg. I serve as Vice President and General Counsel for the Nuclear Energy Institute. My members include all operating reactor licensees as well as the owners of decommissioned facilities. I appreciate the opportunity to offer the following comments on behalf of NEI and its members. I also note that NEI will be providing written comments on the proposed rule and draft GEIS in November. My comments today are meant to support and be consistent with the forthcoming written comments. From the industry's perspective, the waste confidence rulemaking has been an excellent example of regulatory transparency. We commend the agency for encouraging and embracing wide public participation through multiple avenues, allowing the agency to consider stakeholder comments from all and various viewpoints. This approach will ensure that the waste confidence rule and GEIS are grounded in a thorough and comprehensive record. Also, I'd like to highlight the importance of a timely resolution of these waste confidence issues. We strongly support maintaining this rulemaking as a priority. Nuclear power plays an important role in this nation's energy mix, given that 63% of the nation's carbon-free electricity comes from nuclear generation. Continuing to license safe, secure, reliable, and environmentally sound nuclear facilities is simply sound public policy. And more particularly, the resumption of licensing activities is essential for long-term power planning decisions. The waste confidence decision has always been and continues to be somewhat of a confusing item. We support the NRC's efforts, therefore, to clarify the related issues. As Andy stated, from a substantive viewpoint, it's important to understand that the waste confidence issues does not constitute a licensing decision. The rule does not authorize licenses, and instead it compromises just one element of the agency's NEPA analysis as license and renewed licenses are considered. Individual plants must still separately obtain a license and be reviewed for the necessary safety and environmental issues. The industry commends the staff's effort to communicate how the waste confidence fits into the broader regulatory context, and we urge you to continue doing this as you proceed through these meetings. In this vein, I'd also like to remind everyone that it's important to keep in mind the relevant NEPA principles, National Environmental Policy Act principles, as the NRC proceeds through this rulemaking. First and foremost, an EIS serves two purposes. It's intended to ensure that federal agencies have available and consider detailed information on the environmental impacts of major federal actions. This is the so-called hard look. Second, the EIS also is intended to ensure that information is made available to the public and other stakeholders who may also play a role in the decision-making process. Notably, and importantly in this context, NEPA itself does not mandate specific results or licensing decisions, but rather it prescribes a process designed to prevent uninformed agency action. Agencies may take action even in situations where significant environmental impacts may result because the agency has carefully balanced the various environmental and other impacts and is not to elevate such impacts over other considerations. Finally, NEPA does not require that an agency delay action until better or other information becomes available. CEQ regulations directly address the notion of incomplete or unavailable information and suggest that worst-case assumptions simply are not required. And to illustrate that point, there is NRC case law holding in part that NEPA did not require the NRC to withhold the granting of a renewed license simply because there may be some future information that is not currently available. So in conclusion, while the NRC has chosen to broadly address the environmental impacts of waste storage in the draft GEIS, it's important to recognize and not to exaggerate what the Court of Appeals directed the agency to address. That is, spent fuel pool fires, leaks, and the no repository scenario. And in addressing the agency, the court asked the agency to provide a basis for its conclusions. The Court of Appeals did not reject the NRC's long-standing findings on the feasibility of a geologic repository or the safety of spent fuel storage pending disposal. The prior findings and record continue to support the current rulemaking in GEIS. As time is short, I will conclude my statement there. We appreciate the opportunity to present these views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to Dawn Safer, then to Susan Shapiro, and then to Brian Haddix. So can you see if Ace is with us and if he's ready to speak?
Okay. One second here.
And just as a reminder, those of you on the phone, you have to press *1 to join the queue.
Okay, so you said the first speaker would be Ace Hoffman?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Ace, your line's open?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ace.
Okay, hi, thank you. I want to start by talking about the money. That I think that what we're all looking for is a cheap solution to a very complicated problem. I would like to recommend, for example, that we wrap our nuclear waste in gold or iridium. Iridium because a metallurgist suggested it would be good, and gold because I think that obviously would be good because of its secure properties. It's strong. Instead, we're using lead and steel and cement. And we're talking about a 100-year change-out. That's mentioned several times in this document. And a 100-year change-out is going to cost, well, let's see, we've got 1,500 roughly dry casks nationally right now. And that means in 100 years, if they last that long, we're going to have to start changing them out at the same rate that we're making them. And if we had all of the fuel that we would like to accelerate the rate that we're making them, and we'll have nearly 10,000 dry casks just by the time we get all the fuel that's already been made put into dry casks. That's an awful lot of dry casks, but that's only the beginning. That's only what they're going to have to do in 100 or 110 years or whatever it takes us to get it all in. And then the other 100,000 dry casks that have been built in the meantime are all going to also need to be replaced over and over and over again. Now, we're not allowed to talk about, or we don't want to talk about terrorism. We can't get into detail about what size of airplane can crash into a dry cask safely. But that's not what they're designed to do. They're just designed to keep the little rods held safely and to let somebody walk by them because they shield the radiation, the gamma rays, and so on. But we're talking about delaying the permanent repository. But meanwhile, this is when the worst fuel is when the fuel is the absolute most dangerous because of all the fission products that are inside. And with all due respect to the experts in the room, I heard of geology experts and I heard of attorneys, but I didn't hear human failure experts or economists that look at these 300-year projections of what we're doing to our country and our children. I didn't hear psychologists there to discuss the property value losses that there's going to be. I didn't even hear nuclear physicists present, and let alone DNA damage specialists, whoever those would be. And of course, I didn't hear any large event accurate estimators, the people who would have told us what was going to happen in Fukushima, and we didn't listen. None of them were there either. They don't exist, really. I mean, some people gave us a little bit of warning, but most people said this couldn't happen. So we're talking about licensing and relicensing. That was Andean's open statement. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when they were giving us dry cask, I have the documents. I was looking at them just a day or two ago. And the word temporary was always in the dry cask phraseology, that this was a temporary solution. But he didn't say, and relicensing, and relicensing, and relicensing for 300 years, 500 years, and that's what's changing them out. Just calling it licensing, relicensing is not going to be good enough. It could be quite a bit longer than that. The environmental consequences of dry cask fires are truly being completely ignored in these proceedings. I think that people will be replacing these things as fast as we're building them. And that is not an optimistic scenario. We're not taking into account the chances of failures in what in how people do things. I mean, if you're going to have 10,000 dry casks, they're not all going to go right. So let's look at what a really bad accident would look like. But instead, you're taking away the environmental impacts and making them generic. I mean, the NEI representative was saying that you're not making decisions with this, we're only setting, it's not a licensing decision. But actually it's forcing the licensing decisions to not discuss all sorts of things. So it's very much a huge part of licensing, and maybe they don't understand what's going on here, which would suggest that you haven't done your job of reaching out to the public so that they understand what's going on there, here, in this meeting today. Because right now, that fuel is 100 times or 1,000 times more dangerous than it's going to be when you finally decide to put it someplace safe. And I think right now is the time to make sure that it's someplace safe. And there's no place that's going to take it. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll take any comments if you have questions.
Safer, and Anna, can you put Dawn Safer on? Dawn, hit *1 if you want to talk. Anna, are you with us?
I am standing by in the call here. My name is Jenny now, and I'm assisting, and I'm watching for the signal, but I'm not showing that person in conference right now.
Okay, thank you very much. We can hear you. Good.
I've hit *1 probably 4 times, but thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I wanted to start by putting this exercise in context. Today, we all know the government is shutting down, and nobody really expected that, and it hopefully will be a temporary shutdown, but this radioactive waste is going to stay toxic for millions of years, and our government will not exist, certainly in that time frame, to make sure that this stuff does not harm future generations. So I think we need to be humble in our relationship to future generations and stop making this radioactive waste. We don't need to make it anymore to generate electricity, solar energy, wind power, energy efficiency. They all relegate nuclear power to a dead end and a historical mistake that future generations will already pay for till the basically end of time. We need to stop making any more radioactive waste. I realize that may be beyond the scope of this particular waste confidence rule, but I think it needs to be stated. Further, I think in terms of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the only reason we're having this exercise and the public is having the opportunity to comment is it took a federal court ruling to vacate the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's waste confidence rule. It has been challenged internally by people concerned that it made no sense, that it was circular thinking with no base in reality, and it took a federal court to require the reconsideration. As I've followed this process, I have been amazed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's bias toward continuing to regulate, to allow radioactive waste to be manufactured by these power plants, and it just points out the fact that the very beginning of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was created because the Atomic Energy Commission was perceived as being unduly favorable to the industry. And I think the NRC is in that same situation now. It's interesting to note that according to the records I've found, NRC has over 4,000 employees, and you do not need people doing this type of thing for solar power, for wind power. We just need to quit making this radioactive waste. The fact that we've been making it for 60 years or more and we have no place to put it and no prospect, and that you're talking about going 100 years into the future before we actually have someplace to put this material, and whether that's even going to be, those are all geologic bets, whatever we decide, whatever deep ground deposit we put these materials into. In terms of geologic time, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, there's no real certainty that you're not going to have some geologic shift, and the material that we thought was safely removed from the environment will then become exposed in some unexpected manner. So I'm just going to close by saying we just need to stop making more radioactive waste, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should start decommissioning every one of these reactors. There's not enough money to decommission them anyway at this point, and we need to stop making more radioactive waste. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. And Susan Shapiro is not on the phone yet, and I would just note that if we call on someone and they're not in the audience or not on the phone, we'll check back later in the meeting to see if they joined us, so you won't lose your opportunity to comment. So we're going to go to Brian Paddock next, and then to Michelle Lee. And either Anna or Jenny, operator, could you put Brian Paddock on? And Brian, you have to hit *1.
Please press *0.
So is it *0 now, operator?
*0 will send a signal out into the conference. *1 is to ask a question over the phone if the question and answer queue is activated.
Well, we're taking comment now, so we do want to hear the people who are on the phone that we're calling, so we do want to use the *1. So if you could put Brian Paddock on, and Brian hit *1 so that you can get on.
Okay, sir. And so would you like me to just have the question and answer queue open and then just watch for that person to come into the question and answer queue as well?
Yeah, and you can, I know you're referring to question and answer in terms of communicating with us, but we're taking comment. We want to listen to the people on the phone. So
sure.
If you could put Brian in.
Okay. And I'm not showing Brian, what did you say his last name was?
Paddock.
And I'm not showing his line in conference at this time.
How about Michelle Lee? Is her line in conference? Michelle, *1. So, operator, are you showing anything for Michelle Lee?
No, sir. I'm looking, and I've looked through the list, and I'm not showing her either. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we're gonna stay on the phone here for a while to see if we can get someone else on, and that would be Stephen Sondheim. Stephen, are you on *1?
I'm not showing his name either, sir.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna go to people here in Rockville, and then we'll take a short break, and just to make sure that we have everything working correctly on the phone. So we're going to go to people here in the audience, operator, and we'll be back to you.
I want to echo what Ellen Ginsberg said, and thank the NRC for its openness in providing this opportunity at a time where we may be questioning our faith in our government during the shutdown. This is certainly an example of how our democratic processes do work. We do have independent agencies that do reasoned considerations of important issues such as this. I just want to say a few words on behalf of the folks that I work with on a daily basis, the professional men and women out there who are responsible for managing used nuclear fuel at our sites, who have compiled a very impressive safety record, We have loaded 1,700 dry cask storage systems with absolutely no release of radioactivity. They've been sitting on the pad, some of them for as long as 30 years. We've done scientific studies. We've opened one up after over a decade in storage. We've looked inside. We have a tremendous base of evidence to know that these systems were steel, concrete, lead, used 100 tons of protection for every 10 tons of used nuclear fuel, do provide outstanding protection. The individuals I work with every day, I've been working for NEI for 15 years, and they're probably the biggest reason I keep coming into work every day, because I am so proud of the job they do, and the experience that they provide, and all the innovation that's occurred in our industry. We have 3 vendors providing these casks. These vendors don't just meet regulations, they have to compete. It's like Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, Siemens, Holtec, Transnuclear, and MAC. That is in general the attitude of the folks I work with on a daily basis at the utilities and at the vendors. We don't just meet regulations, we exceed them. And a lot is said in this EIS about confidence in NRC's regulatory process, and that's how we will know that storage is safe. And, well, yeah, the regulatory process is very strict, but it is indeed the nuclear culture that we have that's in place on all those individuals I know, and I'm speaking out on behalf of here today, as well as I know the ones that will come in the future, because you don't get into this business unless you have that confidence. Someone else I respect is Janet Kotra, who spoke earlier, and I certainly understand her frustration on geologic disposal. I know she was here at the very beginning of all of this, and made a significant contribution when she was with the NRC. And yes, waste confidence did initially used to be about primarily geologic disposal, but over time, our system has given us delays in geologic disposal. And now it has also become about storage, which is why in pools and in casks, our ability to safely store it is indeed something that we can have confidence in. And we will continue to provide this confidence. Some things that Kevin Camps said earlier, the spent fuel pool fires. I think the most relevant piece of data there is what's in NRC's most recently issued spent fuel pool study. We showed that the fuel is only hot enough to burn, even if you drain all the water out of the pool. I mean, you can noodle the scenarios about what causes it to drain or what doesn't cause it to drain, but it's only hot enough to burn for the first 2 months after it comes out of the reactor. That's not the time periods we're interested in here. There were a lot of rumors at Fukushima 4, but those rumors turned out to be false. The fuel in 7 pools, including 3 that were in buildings that completely blew up, is still safe. It's still underwater. Very robust structures, a lot of nuclear cultures. He mentioned a number of reactors where there were spent fuel pool leaks, all of them considered in this EIS. All of the impacts meeting the definition of small, because the right steps were taken. He mentioned one in particular that I have personal experience with, a high-flux beam reactor in Long Island. I was in the Department of Energy. I worked on that. I worked with the people who went out into the communities and took the steps we needed to assure people that their drinking water would be safe. No regulatory limits were ever exceeded or approached. We don't just meet regulations, we exceed regulations. There's a lot here to have confidence in. There's a lot more that will be said. But, and I do think that, you know, these 100-year scenarios and repackaging, NEI may have some things to say about that. We don't think we're going to be repackaging every 100 years. We do think that the international consensus on geologic disposal will someday reach our government, and it will build a repository. But until then, our commitment, the regulatory framework, all the things that are mentioned in the EIS will keep these materials safe in these robust structures. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Matthews. I'm a partner in the nuclear regulatory practice at the law firm Morgan, Lewis & Bockius here in Washington. My firm represents various stakeholders in the regulated nuclear community, including owners and operators of power reactors, independent spent fuel and storage installations, various fuel cycle facilities, research reactors, among others. We represent a wide array of entities involved in the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. The comments I express today are our own as participants in this regulated community. They've do not necessarily represent the views of any particular licensee, applicant, or of any other client. We appreciate this opportunity to speak here today. We commend the agency's efforts that have brought us this far and encourage the continued engagement of the commissioners, senior NRC management, and the technical staff to complete the rulemaking in a timely manner. Timely resolution is critically important. The Commission has suspended a number of licensing decisions pending resolution of this issue. Deferral of these decisions has impacts for the organizations affected. Licensing decisions are essential for the long-term power planning and other business decisions, such as schedules for capital improvements. This essential decision-making will remain disrupted and inefficient until licensing decisions resume. Timely completion of the draft GEIS demonstrates what the NRC staff can accomplish when given clear Commission direction, management engagement, and adequate resources. This rulemaking should serve as a benchmark for other significant NRC activities, such as licensing and design certification reviews, extended schedules for which seem to have become accepted in some quarters as a new norm. The example demonstrates conclusively that what the agency can do. I'd like to touch briefly on the impact of the waste confidence decision in individual licensing actions. While many safety reviews of licensing actions have continued on schedule, in some cases, the parallel environmental review schedules have slipped as resources have become diverted to support this GEIS effort. The staff should promptly return to those environmental reviews and prioritize review resources so that further delay in adjudicatory proceedings or licensing issuances is avoided. In the fall of 2012, the Commission ordered that consideration of waste confidence contentions in adjudicatory proceedings before the Atomic Safety and Licensing Boards be held in abeyance while the agency determined how it would address the issues remanded by the D.C. Circuit. The agency has now established a clear path and is well along the way to generic resolution of the remanded issues. Accordingly, the staff should promptly recommend to the Commission options for resumption of adjudicatory reviews, and specifically exclusion of waste confidence related issues from review in individual licensing proceedings, absent the grant of a case-specific waiver to challenge a matter that is the subject of an ongoing generic rulemaking. I have just a few comments on the development of the generic EIS. The NRC and its staff are widely recognized for their technical expertise. The GEIS appropriately draws upon that expertise and upon evaluations performed by the technical staff. Though not required by the NEPA, the GEIS makes very conservative assumptions. In other words, the GEIS makes assumptions that tend to overstate the environmental impacts of used fuel storage. For example, the GEIS assumes that used fuel will be moved to new casks every 100 years under the long-term storage scenario, even though current science and experience shows that cask replacement need not necessarily occur that frequently. The GEIS includes detailed sections and appendices that thoroughly address the three issues identified by the D.C. Circuit in New York versus NRC, specifically the no repository scenario, spent fuel leaks, and spent fuel pool fires. Notably, the no repository scenario is fully evaluated throughout the GEIS as the indefinite storage scenario. Furthermore, the GEIS includes a detailed technical evaluation of the environmental risks of spent fuel pool leaks and fires. In particular, the supporting appendices in the GEIS fully demonstrate that the risk-based impacts of spent fuel pool leaks and fires both are small. I'd like to close with 2 points. First, the agency has an established history of addressing this set of waste confidence issues generically. That approach was not the subject of criticism by the D.C. Circuit. In fact, the generic approach and reliance on the substantial body of existing work was anticipated by the court. Second, NEPA does not require a unanimity of public opinion or even consensus. It requires that the agency take a look at the available information and apply a rule of reason. NRC already has gone well beyond the requirements of NEPA to evaluate the issues in this draft GEIS. It should now complete the process and timely issue the final GEIS and the final rule. We appreciate this opportunity to participate in this important rulemaking proceeding and encourage the staff to continue toward timely completion of this important activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.